Bring it on in. Football is king here on Pick Swap Media. Ryan Coyle and Nick McClay back for our new weekly show on the channel, diving into everything NFL, college, and anything in the world of football. Plenty of topics to talk about this week. We are now stunningly in the middle of October. We got football on Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights now going forward, Thursday nights. I think starting last week, it was 49 straight days of football. So a little bit of football on your screen every single night from here, I think, till after Thanksgiving weekend, I think, is when it finally slows down. So plenty of action to get into, break down, get into some big picture topics. Got another great slate of college games this weekend, as always. So, Nick, welcome back. How are we? And a lot of ball to talk tonight.
Yeah, a lot of ball to talk about, especially after, the week that we just had. A lot to talk about in the college football world. Obviously, Penn State, what is their outlook on the rest of the year? What does James Franklin really do from here? What does Penn State do from here? There's a lot of question marks just around that one team. But there's a lot of, just question marks overall from the college football standpoint. We can't come in. We think there's going to be a good quarterback class heading into the draft class. Not really looking like that. Cade Klubnik goes down. Drew Aller goes down. There's a lot, to still, unfold as this, college football season goes on. And then not even to touch on the NFL. I feel like this has been one of the most, week-to-week basis NFL, seasons that we've had in a while. Colts 5-1. Eagles look like, bottom of the barrel the last 2 weeks. Like, we really have no clue what to watch on a week-to-week basis. It's a week-to-week league in the NFL right now. So there's a lot to get into, and, we'll touch on it all today.
Yeah, we usually start on the college side. Obviously, the James Franklin discussion is a big one, something that we'll touch in. But I want to go and start in the NFL this week, actually, and kind of take a big picture view. After 4 weeks, we had 2 4-0 teams, the Eagles and the Bills. Since then, the Eagles have lost to the Broncos and to the Giants in embarrassing fashion. And then the Bills also on Sunday night last week to the Patriots, who are looking like a potential playoff team. And then last night on Monday Night Football, they lost to the Atlanta Falcons. And Anthony DeBonia on Twitter tweeted this earlier. Record over the last 2 weeks for the Eagles, 0-2, points per game 17, yards per play 5.7. Bills last 2 weeks, 0-2 record, 17 points per game, yards per play 5.7. And I bet if you went on Twitter, if you listened to a podcast, if you watch TV anytime between, the Eagles last game and this morning, you're not nearly seeing as much panic for people about Buffalo than they are Philadelphia. And I understand how the Eagles did do this back in 2023, but the Bills have only beaten teams with a combined record of 3-21 thus far. The Eagles still wins over the Bucs, who are looking like potentially the best team in the NFC. The Chiefs, who are the Chiefs. The Cowboys, who are very dangerous, still your division rival. And then the Rams as well, one of the best teams in the NFC. Pretty crazy fashion in that one, but in your opinion, Nick, why is the discourse so much more overblown about, Philadelphia rather than Buffalo when the Bills haven't beat anyone? And they haven't beat anyone in the playoffs either. They've come up short every single year. The Eagles have at least shown they can get to the Super Bowl, and they even won it last year.
Yeah, I honestly have no really clue. Maybe just based off the way that the Philadelphia Eagles have won the games that they've won this year, they've been pretty ugly wins. I mean, I just don't really get why we're coming all towards the Eagles when the Bills, like you said, have done the same exact thing when we have been to a Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl. So really doesn't make any sense to me as to why that's a discord all around the social media. But you think Colts have 5-1 record. They've beat the Dolphins, the Broncos, Titans, Raiders, and Cardinals and lost to the Rams. They honestly should have won that game to the Rams, but you end up losing that game. You have that loss, but you've only beat the Dolphins. Broncos, they're an all right team, good defense, but does that really prove anything? Titans, Raiders, and Cardinals doesn't really prove anything to me. Like you said, this is such a crapshoot of a league that you don't know what's going to happen from a week-to-week basis. I think this is kind of, you get towards the middle of the season in the NFL, injuries start to happen. These are when teams kind of start to figure out what they really need to do to win games, whether it be ugly, whether it be pretty. One way or another, teams are going to find ways to win games. And we've seen the Colts do it. Not pretty teams that they've beat, they've played against, but they end up getting the wins, and that's really all you need in the NFL.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like you said, that's what happens, and people make the discourse about the Eagles, failure to execute in the passing game, and that's been kind of well documented. But also, just like I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt still. Like they found ways to win ugly last year. Started out 4-2 last year, and they weren't even playing great down the stretch last year. People were still kind of freaking out. Though the one thing I am really concerned with, because the passing game had its woes last year for Philadelphia, but the running game has really had their woes this year. And the running game was awesome last year, as we know, Saquon going over 2,000 yards. What do you think the biggest issue is with the Eagles in terms of running the football right now? Is it Saquon just had too many touches last year? Is it the offensive line? Or is it, everyone basically saying we're going to make them beat them with our arm and Saquon's not going to beat us?
I think a lot of it is really the offensive line. The offensive line has not played as well as we expected them to, especially after the last 3-4 years of them having probably the best offensive line in the NFL. But at the same time, I feel like we're really only playing or calling plays up the middle for Saquon, when really we need to get him in space and on those outside zones where he can really make those cuts that we've seen him do the last season, obviously. But we really haven't seen him get to the, explosive level, to the second level, those runs that, we talked about before where he can just see a gap and hit a gap. We haven't seen that yet this year. I think that has a lot to do with the offensive line. Are they banged up? Are they just not playing well? Either way, it all has to come together at some point for this team to really have success as the year goes on.
When you look at the futures market right now for the NFC, they have the Packers, the Lions, and the Lions still above the Eagles. I'm still kind of confused about the lack of respect for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially with all the guys that have been down. Like right now Ibuka's out, Chris Godwin hasn't played, Mike Evans has been out, Bucky Irving's out, and they're still sitting there with only one loss to the Eagles. Baker Mayfield's playing awesome. I think the D is more than holding their own. Why do you think the Bucs aren't really getting the necessary respect in the NFC? Because if you're making me take a team today and say, by December, these guys are all going to be back on the field and be healthy, why wouldn't I go with the Bucs to be the NFC representative right now?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and all in on the Bucs. I think we talked about that in the offseason, the way their rosters just built up. They have a bunch of players that are just dogs on this team, and Baker is playing like a dog, like an MVP, and proving really what type of player he is. And we've seen it throughout his college career of what type of player he is, and he just brought this right to Tampa Bay, brought that environment, that atmosphere that I'm going to go out there, whoever is against me, whoever's across, the field, I'm going to beat whatever way I have to. He's going to get it done, and he's proven that. So I think I'm right with you. So I don't understand why. I mean, I guess I understand the injuries, but if you're telling me that they're back by the end of the year, they're going to be a scary team in the NFC.
Yeah, you make me pick a team right now to go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. I'm going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was my team going into the season. And like I said, they've had all these health injuries, and they still have managed to have this much success thus far. I think Baker Mayfield, as of today, is your NFL MVP. I'm not sure why Patrick Mahomes is in there. Maybe his rushing stats and his rushing yards are rushing touchdowns are kind of helping those. But what Baker's done with basically a rotating cast of characters so far at wide receiver, when Ibuka, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans are all in the field, I don't know how you're going to stop that. You combine that with Bucky Irving and then an experienced defensive-minded head coach in Todd Bowles. That's going to be a tough team to stop each and every week. So no reason for me to back off my NFC Bucs prediction as of today. But heading over to the AFC, just kind of more big picture thoughts, Nick. What are your thoughts on the Chiefs maybe getting back to the top? They had a tough loss 2 weeks ago to the Jags, but then come back in a nice bounce-back win against the Detroit Lions the other night. The Ravens, who knows what they look like. It sounds like Lamar's going to be back off the bye, but are we really buying them to come back from 1-5? The Bills sitting here as well. Are they for real? And then the Colts, you kind of touched on them as well. Are we really going to buy into that Daniel Jones hype, or is he just playing really well again in a contract year like he did in his first time with the Giants?
Yeah, I think this is, if it wasn't last week or the previous, I think this is the week to kind of buy into the Chiefs. I think getting, those returning pieces in Rice and Worthy just getting him more healthy, I think that's really dangerous for this Chiefs and for the AFC as a whole. I know they had Josh Simmons out as well too. I think it was a personal family matter. So once he comes back too, that offensive line, shores up a little bit. Defense has been playing well too. They just blitz and blitz and blitz and just make teams, really under pressure. So I think that Chiefs team, as crazy, not crazy as it sounds, but as, their record shows right now, they're going to be obviously in the mix as, the season goes on. And they're in a spot right now where you can kind of buy into them and get some nice value for a Chiefs team that has been a dynasty the last, however many seasons, handful of seasons that, has proven to be able to make it to the big game. So I think Chiefs, if you want to buy in, this is probably one of your last weeks to try to buy into them.
All right, let's look at a couple games this week in the NFL before getting over to the college discussion. We talked about the Eagles to start off the show. I think it's a huge spot for them this week. Sitting here at 4-2, they travel to the Vikings, who are 3-2. As we know, Brian Flores, one of the best defensive minds in the game. What are they going to have dialed up for Jalen Hurts and this Eagles offense that's struggling right now? Carson Wentz, is he going to start? That's a pretty huge storyline as well, kind of with Jalen Hurts being the replacement for Carson Wentz. Can the Eagles get off the mat this week after losing back-to-back games, after having not lost in forever? Can the Eagles get back up off the mat this week on the road at the Vikings? Vegas still likes them as they're favored by 1.5 right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously as Eagles fans, we've seen how, brutal it's been to watch this team the last few weeks with, all the talent that they have had, how they looked last season. As of now, it just looks all out of sync. It looks all over the place, few injuries, both sides of the ball. It has hurt them, but that's not really an excuse to really look the way that they've had. Hurts, this offense doesn't really seem to be on the same page. Like we touched on, they can't really even get Saquon going. So, I think kind of everyone on this Eagles team, coaches included, kind of need to take some type of accountability and really just step up to a Vikings team that I think we are better than. Still up in the air. Is it going to be J.J. McCarthy? Is it going to be Wentz? Be a nice storyline if Wentz, was playing, maybe get some revenge. But I think, if I had to guess, Justin Jefferson, one way or another, is going to have himself a day. I saw Quinyon Mitchell is a little banged up too. I feel like all the signs are kind of pointing to take the Vikings with how the Eagles have looked, but I got to stick with the Eagles. I'm just looking for them to prove me that they are still a top team in this league. And the past few weeks have scared me. So I think this week, let's get back on track. Let's get in the win column. I think Eagles win 24-17 in this one.
Yeah, if the Eagles don't find a way to win this week, I'm definitely smashing that panic button. And it was good to kind of have a mini bye coming off that Giants game, which was just an interesting spot. Giants, I think, were playing with kind of house money in that one. They got these two young kids running all over the place and bringing some life back kind of into that Giants franchise, and the Eagles coming off a deflating loss. But there certainly are some issues with this Philadelphia Eagles team right now. What are they exactly? Are they scheme-wise? Are there locker room issues? That remains to be seen. I hate with how good they've been over the past few years, how many games they've won. It always seems like there's something going on, even when they're winning, and it's a bit head-scratching. You don't know what's going inside in those locker room walls each and every day. But this is one of those games where if you are going to kind of write your season and not let it go to waste like you did 2 years ago when you started 10-1 and it absolutely fell apart down the stretch, this again, you find a way to win. Jalen Hurts, you don't lose to Carson Wentz. This Eagles defense, you find a way to cause a few turnovers on Carson Wentz. You do everything you can to find a way to win this game. It doesn't have to be pretty, 20-17. Just go to Minnesota, get out of it with a win, and move on. You have a very easy schedule, I think, coming up, doable schedule at least compared to what you started off with. I think you're already through kind of the hardest part of that season with those first 4 games, and then even throw the Broncos game in there as well. But I think greener times are ahead for the Eagles. You can lose a couple games in the NFL. It's very tough to win in this league. And there's a few games at the beginning of the season where the Eagles found a way to win, where you could look at the box score or just the overall game and just say they didn't really deserve to win that game. So all those things kind of even out at the end of the day. I think the Eagles are able to get back on track this week as well. All right, one more game I want to touch on, then we'll go over to the college card. 2 teams that we didn't touch on that much. You touched on the Colts a little bit, but Colts at 5-1. They go to LA to play the 4-2 Chargers. 4:05 kick on CBS. Chargers are 1.5-point favorite. Over/under is 48.5 in that one, Nick. You sound like you're kind of buying into the Daniel Jones hype, but you also were buying into the Chargers hype this offseason. What are your thoughts on this matchup? And are either of these teams legit contenders in your eyes in the NFC?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, most surprising team probably in the NFL right now, it has to be the Colts. Coming into this at 5-1, Daniel Jones and a defense that looks pretty good right now. They have the best point differential in the NFL with 78, and the next closest are the Lions and Seahawks at 49. So they lead by 29 points in that category, which is insane. Now, again, we touched on it. To play devil's advocate here, they've beat the Dolphins, Broncos, Titans, Raiders, and Cardinals, and lost to the Rams. So, we're going to learn a lot about this Colts team, I think, in the next few weeks to kind of see if they are legit or not. And on the other side, I've been very high on this Chargers team, but they're very banged up on both sides of the ball. Justin Herbert has to protect the ball in this one, I think. Don't cause any turnovers. This is one where I think the Chargers really need it if they want to prove that they can still hang at the top of the AFC, even with all the injuries that they've dealt with. As, like you said, someone that's a Herbert fan, someone that's bet the Chargers to win the AFC West, I'm going to keep backing them. I'm going to stay in their corner, and hopefully they kind of prove the Colts might be flying a little too high right now. So give me the Chargers at home, 24-21.
I like the Chargers in that one at home too. I like the over too. I think that both of these offenses can go out there and put up some points. Chargers offense, I thought, looked kind of their most explosive that they have this season last week, and I know that was against the Dolphins, but I don't think the Colts defense is necessarily all that dangerous. And we saw Jacoby Brissett last week have one of the best games that he's had recently in the NFL against that Colts defense. So I think Justin Herbert and that passing game is still looking pretty strong. The running game is going to be a week-to-week thing. Like Vidal looked really good last week. How does he look this week? Once again, they were playing the Dolphins last week, but that was an impressive victory at the end. I think that's a scenario where we've seen the Chargers lose those close games year over year. And Justin Herbert was able to come through, had that crazy play, shaking off Jalen Phillips. Ladd McConkey makes a great play after the catch, and the Chargers go on to win that game. That's a game that good playoff teams win, and the Chargers found a way to do that and execute. So a lot of big picture talk there, NFL-wise. Want to get over to college football now. The big story in college football coming out last week, James Franklin, after what I would still consider a very good tenure at Penn State, obviously bringing them out of the dark. Bill O'Brien was there for the 2 years before that, but for a program that was at kind of rock bottom, had all the Sandusky allegations and sanctions to go through and get out of. For James Franklin to still build that team into a perennial top 10 contender was a good work, was a good piece of work, I think. And still, I think he deserves his respect. And you could see kind of how much the program and the locker room loved him. Former players coming out, giving Twitter posts, Instagram posts about him. That's a coach that left his mark on that program for sure, James Franklin at Penn State. And I think is going to be remembered there in a positive light. The end wasn't ideal with Drew Aller obviously going out in the last game and finishing his Penn State career. James Franklin being booed off the field after his third straight loss. And just a few weeks ago, they're a top 5 team hosting Oregon in the whiteout, leading in overtime. And now he's without a job. Just a crazy turn of events over the past few weeks. But the AD said it best, where it wasn't a 3-game sample size. Like this was just a move that I think he needed to make to get this program over the top. And he believes AD Pat Kraft that this is a championship level program nationally wise. We're not just talking Big Ten championships. And we saw, I think, James Franklin and Penn State kind of had a ceiling there. So I think it was definitely time to make that move. It's a hard move to make, but Penn State's a very attractive job. Nick, what are your thoughts on just the overall situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough move to make, but like you said, it's a move that they had to make. They haven't been able to get over the hump the past few years. His resume does speak for itself. He has had the accomplishments and brought them to where they are right now. Not really a bottom team when he came into it, but he kind of really elevated that program to bring in a lot of top recruits, a lot of top transfers as well. Didn't end how they wanted it to at all. Obviously, coming into the season, this was everyone's saying this is the roster, this is the year to get over that hump, and the way that they just came out flat. It was pretty bad. It's going to suck that this is how people are probably going to remember James Franklin. But I think, in the end, he did, a positive for this Nittany Lion program.
Yeah, it is a tough situation. It's kind of just like a relationship sometimes where it's just like,
Yep.
it was good for a while. But, at this stage of the game, it's just best if goes separate ways. And that happens, whether that's life, football. But still, Nick, that's a very attractive job. I wouldn't say a top 5 job in college football, top 10 though. Who is your first 2 or 3 calls if you're Penn State looking to get your new head coach there?
I mean, from reports, it's looking like Matt Rule is going to get a bunch of calls going over there from Nebraska after he's doing what he's doing with Dylan Raiola back there. And I'm just praying to God it isn't really Matt Campbell from Iowa State. I'm sure that he's going to get a call. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't at least answer. Going, the option to go to a program like Penn State. But I think as of now, Matt Rule is probably in the lead for me right now. And I think Missouri's coach could sneak in there. He's gotten that program looking really good. Bo Pribula from Penn State. I know that really doesn't have anything to do, but a little funny connection right there. I think he could probably get that call too from Mizzou.
Yeah, I'm looking at Alex Golish for Penn State. He's definitely one of my first calls. Alex Golish, the head coach down there at South Florida. He's a former Alabama assistant, I believe, under Nick Saban. And he's kind of worked his way up to being a head coach here at South Florida. We saw firsthand last week the amount of points that they just put up on North Texas. Got a few impressive wins this season over Florida, over Boise State in week one as well. That's a young and upcoming offensive coach that I think if he goes to a school like Penn State, like that's his school. That's where he can build forever. He's not looking to make a move to, a lower tier ACC team and then parlay that into an SEC job or an upper tier Big Ten job. If Alex Golish gets that call from Penn State, I think that's a spot where he runs right away. He signs that check, and he's your next coach for hopefully a decade plus. Hopefully, he's the guy that can get you over the top. Now, does Penn State feel like they're above that and they can poach, like you said, a Matt Rule, like Eli Drinkowitz, a coach from another big time level school? Maybe, and maybe that's the case. But I think if you're Penn State, you kind of got to go in a little bit of a different direction, in innovative direction, and see if you can get that coach that can take you over the top long term. Because say what you want about Matt Rule, he's a hell of a coach. He's won really everywhere he's gone, but how much better really is he than James Franklin? Eli Drinkowitz has been a really good coach, and I don't think Missouri has the resources that James Franklin and Penn State had. But can Eli Drinkowitz be more than James Franklin? I think you might have to be taking kind of an outside the box hire here a little bit and go for that home run swing. Curt Cignetti is certainly a name that's going to be in the mix as well. But I think at this stage of the game, why leave Indiana? I think Indiana right now is above Penn State. It's pretty crazy to say that as a football program. They can pay them money for money as well. They might not have the facility, or they might not have the football culture, the tradition that Penn State does, but the situation there at Indiana right now for a team that looks like they could be, right there with Ohio State as the best team in the country. I don't think that's a situation we're getting Cignetti to leave. So this is going to be something to certainly monitor over the next few weeks. It's going to be back and forth each and every week, but with rumors, I assume we're not going to have an answer that soon, as a lot of these teams are in the middle of the season. But we got a bunch of great games this week, Nick. Want to highlight a few. I want to start with the annual third Saturday in October game in the SEC. Number 11 Tennessee, who's 5-1, at number 6 Alabama, who's also 5-1. 7:30 kick on ABC. Bama's a 9.5-point favorite here. Over under is 59.5. And I think as of today, we're sitting here saying Alabama is back on top as the best team in the SEC.
Yeah, they're coming in really hot right now. Last 3 wins coming against Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Georgia. And ever since that week 1 game against Florida State, they've really bounced back, kind of proven to get better every single week since then. And on the flip, Joey Aguilar and this Tennessee offense has looked really good up to this point. I think, 2 teams with 2 star quarterbacks. Ty Simpson's second in the Heisman right now at plus 380, and really launching up people's draft boards from what I've seen on Twitter, like really from the start of this season, just boosting up his draft stock. And Aguilar, Heisman at plus 3,500. So, I think one thing that really helps Alabama is this offensive line and how much time they really give Ty Simpson to, make decisions back there. They have the top 25 offensive line according to team pass blocking grade, but they're going to get up against a really tough Tennessee defense. It has 4 defensive linemen that have at least 4+ sacks. They're second in the country in total sacks. So to me, I think this one's going to be one in the trenches. Even how good these 2 quarterbacks are, I think whoever wants it at the line of scrimmage more is going to win this game. I think 9.5 is a lot of points to be giving, so I probably lean Tennessee in the points, but I think Alabama comes out here, Ty Simpson, and after a week where Ryan Williams didn't really do anything, I think expect a big bounce back from Ryan Williams. Give me Alabama 38-31. I think high scoring one in this one.
Yeah, 9.5 is a ton of points.
Yeah,
a ton of points in this one. I think you got to take Tennessee to keep it within that number. Vegas has been very sharp on these Bama lines the past few weeks. It depends, I think, what number you had, but they were hovering right around the number against both Vanderbilt and Missouri. It depends like where you got it at, what stage of the game, and obviously whose side you were on, but it was right around there. So I would expect this one to be either like a 10-point game or a 9-point game, kind of somewhere in that regard. But I agree. I really like the over in this Alabama-Tennessee game. Alabama can put up points, but the defense, I think, has really picked it up as well. And you touched on it, Ty Simpson. He might be the number 1 overall pick next year. He doesn't have that much experience right now, but guys like Todd McShay are raving about him and basically saying everything you want out of a quarterback, Ty Simpson is out there doing, whether it's at the line of scrimmage, making the right reads, making the right throws. He's been balling out this season, and Joey Aguilar too. You touched on it, Nick. I don't know if he's an NFL prospect, but he's been a damn good college quarterback this year at Tennessee. I was a little bit skeptical that he could make this jump to the SEC, but they played really well on the offensive side of the ball. The Tennessee defense isn't nearly as strong as last year. I think Alabama's going to be able to put some points up on them, but I think we get a really fun back and forth, high scoring game. Alabama and Tennessee over the past 3 years or so have given us a lot of awesome games. So I like sit back, watch the over, hit in this one, 59.5. I think that's the play in this game, but that should be a really fun one. And if Alabama wins, I think they're in the driver's seat because each and every week I think they're getting a little bit better. So let's stay in the SEC. Number 5, Ole Miss at 6-0. They go to number 9, Georgia, who's 5-1. 3:30 kick on ABC. Georgia, a big 7.5-point favorite here. Over under 54.5. Ole Miss knocks off Georgia last year. Obviously, though, that game at Ole Miss. Georgia last week, they're a fumble at the goal line away from Auburn from starting that game down 17-0. And now here they are, a 7.5-point favorite at home. It's been a Georgia team that has started out slow, I think. In the Tennessee game, they started out slow. The Auburn game, they started out slow. But they seem to get better as the game goes on and finish really strong. Do you like them to win and cover against Ole Miss?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a big spread and a big SEC spread. I think, Georgia, like you said, looking for a little revenge here after, Ole Miss beat them last year. Obviously, both teams look different, but both head coaches still there, both guys that are very familiar with each other. And, with Georgia, other than that Tennessee game, I think their offense has been pretty conservative, kind of like just relying on that run game. And I saw Gunnar Stockton has thrown the second most screen passes in the country, which is crazy. Seems like they just like to get, the ball out quick, let their guys work in space. It's not a team Georgia is a team that's kind of just going to drag you into the game that they play. You know what I mean? And on the flip side, Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss, far from conservative. They're going to go out there and, really try to put up some points. But they're coming off a game where they almost lost against Washington State. And we saw Trinidad kind of make some head-scratching plays. And, barely. He did put up 253 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground as well. But, this Georgia team, I think, is a different defense to go up against. I think, for Ole Miss, it really comes down to can Chambliss bounce back after that tough game, head on the road in a tough place to win. I think 7.5 might be, a little too confident for me for Georgia. So I think I would maybe take Ole Miss and the points, but I think Georgia comes away with a win. I think they're just good at sticking to their game, trusting what they believe in. And I think at home in Georgia, I'm going to trust the home team there.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me. I think 7.5 is a lot too. I think the biggest thing I think with this Georgia team is their defense isn't the same as before. They don't have a Jalen Carter, a Nakobe Dean, a Jordan Davis. They don't have those, no pun intended, but dogs really on this defense that we're accustomed to seeing. They don't have that blue chip lock first round top 5, top 10 pick that we've seen over the Kirby Smart years. And I think that's a big kind of mental hurdle, mental block to get over. Like, especially if you're a guy like Trinidad Chambliss, last year playing Division II football, now you're going up against the mighty Georgia Bulldogs, but they don't have those scary guys like they had before. And Georgia still has been a really tough team. Very impressive the way that they were able to come back against both Tennessee and Auburn. But they don't strike the fear into opponents' eyes like I think that they have over the past 3 to 4 seasons. And I think that gives Ole Miss a fighting chance in this one because a lot of the times it's the helmet, it's the jersey nameplate. Like, who are we going up against? And are we talented enough to compete with those guys? Yes, but we're going down to Athens. That's a scary environment. And I think Ole Miss, I think that they've shown me enough this year that they're going to be able to at least keep it within the number. I don't know how confident I am that I'm going to pick them to win this week, but I do like Ole Miss to cover that 7.5, keep that game pretty close. And Trinidad Chambliss to continue to be one of the stories in all of college football. That it still baffles me each and every week what he's been able to do thus far. So give me the Ole Miss Rebels to cover in that one, but I think I'm going to, at the end of the day, take the Georgia Bulldogs to win. All right, we'll finish up with this one, Nick. Staying in the SEC. Pretty wild to see this line. It's another one where if you went to a coma 5 years ago and just woke up and you saw number 10 LSU at 5-1, at number 17 Vandy 5-1 for a noon kick on ABC with Vandy as a 2.5-point favorite, over under sitting at 49.5, you'd be scratching your head saying, what the hell happened?
Yeah, just before I get into that, which is insane to think about, as you were touching on how this Georgia defense is completely different, they have only 6 sacks on the year that I saw, and 5 of them are from linebackers. So wow. They're not getting any push to the quarterback, which can really make Chambliss, just go back there and do what he has been able to do when he has time use his legs. If he can use his legs, I think Ole Miss does have a chance in that one. But to move on to, LSU and Vandy, this is huge storyline in this game. 2 5-1 teams. I think the loser of this game is really hurting their chances at a playoff spot. Whoever loses this game might not have any more room for error the rest of this season. And I was really high on this LSU team heading into the year and even higher on Nussmeier, who's my preseason Heisman. But this offense just doesn't really look right or in sync up to this point. They turning the ball over. They just really haven't seemed to click yet. But on the other side of the ball, that defense has looked really good, only allowing 12 points per game. And, with Vanderbilt playing good football all season long, they got only losses to Alabama, which is looking like a very good loss, which, again, they were in it the whole entire way. Few turnovers, missed chances really hurt them late in that game. I think if Vanderbilt really wants to win that, they're going to have to do it in the running game, control the game, and kind of win that time of possession. They're 28th in rushing grade, 3rd in yards per carry, and 1st in yards before contact. So I think guys like, Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks are going to have to contain, that Vanderbilt rushing game if they want to win that game. And with how Nussmeier has really looked so far, I'm not really too, confident in that LSU offense. But if the defense can come to play, can dominate, I think they're the team to win this game. But for Vanderbilt, this is a spot to show why they deserve the spot at the top of the SEC, especially against a team like LSU that hasn't looked right on offense. This is when they can kind of pounce on them. But last week, LSU's run game has really, that's when they started to get going last week. 165 rushing yards season high, 5.5 yards per carry season high, and 4.8 yards after contact, which is another season high. So if they can get the run game going, that can get set up Nussmeier in the passing game. I think overall this might be a little stay away game for me. I already have a future on LSU to make the playoffs, so I think I'm going to ride that. But with the defenses here and how LSU's offense looked, I think I would lean the under in this one.
Yeah, this game is a fade of LSU for me, man. I'm just not bought onto this team, even with the ability to win these close games. They kind of remind me of like the Eagles potentially you could compare to, where it just doesn't quite look right. Like they're escaping these games. They're not really looking that great. Like if you look back at the Clemson game, like is that even a good win anymore? I know going to Clemson's tough, but 17-10 beating them, you're not able to move the ball on them. The Florida game, 20-10, you're not able to move the ball on them. South Carolina, even last week, was a kind of a late cover. You're not able to move the ball on them. At Ole Miss, you're not able to move the ball. Garrett Nussmeier coming into the year, potential number 1 pick, potential Heisman Trophy quarterback. He's been one of, if not the most disappointing players in all of college football this year. You could put Drew Aller in that mix. You could put Cade Klubnik in that mix, but Garrett Nussmeier deserves that as well. And there's rumors that he might be a little bit injured. He's banged up right now, and you kind of see it throughout the game. He's wincing a little bit. He doesn't really quite look right, and the running game has really struggled. You touched on it. It's getting a little bit better, but this is a spot where Diego Pavia and this Vandy squad are legit. Like, they hung with Alabama, who arguably could be the best team in the country. This is a team that is not afraid of anything. We talk about getting over that mental block of the logo on the helmet, the logo on the jersey, the logo or the name on the nameplate. This Vanderbilt squad has really gotten over kind of that hump and the ability to kind of push that to the side. So I'm rolling with Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt at home in this one. I'm going to take them to win this game. I'm going to take them to cover. That LSU defense is legit. That LSU defense is going to be one that does make it hard to score the ball. And so I think the under could be in play here as well, 48.5. But I'm going with Diego Pavia and this Vanderbilt offense. And just looking at like ESPN right now, I'm not sure if it's the way that the color of their ties came out or if they did this intentionally, but it looks like they're wearing the Tennessee color ties. Like, this is a program that is just like absolutely psychotic at this stage of the game. So I'm going to roll with Vandy this week. Any other kind of major action, Nick, that you want to hit on the college side, or any major college points before we head out this week?
I guess we'll go to my love for the Big 12, BYU and Utah. Huge, holy war game there. Two teams that just really don't like each other. And for, the first time, I think I saw in 15 or 16 years that both teams are ranked in the top 25 when meeting up. So, I think this one is really just going to show who the other team is that will be battling with Texas Tech at the top of the Big 12. And we already saw what Texas Tech did to Utah in Utah, with that Texas Tech defense just really, suffocating that Utah offense. But BYU is, the only undefeated team in the Big 12. No really big wins, I'd say. They've beaten Colorado, West Virginia, and Arizona in their last 3 games. So they've taken care of the business and beaten whoever was in front of them. So it's just nothing really has wowed me just yet. But having a true freshman in Bear Bachmeier do what he's doing right now, you got to be impressed with that. Going 6-0 in the Big 12 as a true freshman is very impressive. I just think going to a high intensity type of game with a defense like Utah, I think going to be a very physical game, and another game here that will be won in the trenches at the line of scrimmage. And Utah has one of the best offensive lines in the country. First in sacks allowed, first in quarterback knockdown rate, second in pressure allowed rate, and fourth in pass blocking rate. And I just don't think BYU is that great of a pass rushing team. I think Devin Dampier is going to have a lot of time to do a lot of damage and kind of show people why people were so high on this Utah team. So I think he will be, a big factor in this one. I think, I'm just going to back Utah here as we were, very high on them in the offseason. I think he's going to make the plays that win Utah this game. Give me Utah 24, BYU 17.
Yeah, we got just wrap it up. A ton of good games this week in college. USC at Notre Dame. That's an awesome one.
Yeah.
Texas Tech at Arizona State. It sounds like Sam Leavitt is going to be back for that one. Texas A&M at Arkansas. That's an interesting matchup, a rivalry game there. Can Arkansas play spoiler? Oklahoma at South Carolina. What does Oklahoma look like coming off their first loss of the season? Georgia Tech at Duke. Georgia Tech could potentially go undefeated in the ACC if they get past Duke in this game. So a lot of big storylines to touch on. Of course, our Miami Hurricanes play on Friday night as well, and Nebraska, Minnesota too. Friday night, we actually got a nice doubleheader. So looking forward to another big weekend of football. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As always, here on PickSwap Media, football is king. We'll be back next week breaking down everything NFL and college. But till then, please subscribe, and we'll talk next week.